Normal, everyday suburban neighborhood. But wait, what's normal about it? Everything. Let's talk about that. So I hear weight gain fetishism is on the rise. If you ask me, it's always been inherently tied to our culture's obsession with weight, and I'd say gain more than loss. Fetish or not, it is usually a dissociative eating binge disorder, very much tied to childhood trauma. In a state of stress, the reward response that food gives can cause a coping mechanism where the body goes on autopilot and you realize you've probably eaten more than you thought you have. This results in a coping of shame or body positivity or toxic positivity at times people use to mask the actual pain from the trauma. And in this culture, it stimulates a competitive cycle. We all try to outdo each other's eating disorders, typically leading to more guilt or shame. I molested that butterfly. At the surface level, you can find that it could be an obsessive compulsive response due to a parent's need for you to eat the whole thing, or even take pleasure in overfeeding you. Typically, the parent will bully as the weight is gained. Where you find it's a subconscious response to actually get that sort of attention, even if you don't remember it being from your own parents. Anorexia involves the same brain chemistry, but involves the body shutting off its hunger as if non existent, kind of with the same desire to ease a former abuser or even a current abuser. The desire to put on weight is correlated with actual sexual abuse, at times in a way to take control over your own body, but for some leading to a very obsessive behavior, really believing they want to be undesirable instead of taking a body positive route or body neutral route. Many human trafficking victims are also victims of CP mukbang genre, really another way to just objectify a child and leave them with lifelong complexes that they'll need to deal with. Some claiming that the destruction of their own body is their choice, and realistically it was a response to very real trauma that they probably can't remember. And it's very difficult to break out of that stupor when you're alone and disassociative. Taking note of your triggers and remembering your trauma might actually help you disassociate less often. With the CP making you eat gross shit, just spacing out and getting it over with. We're literally brought up in a culture that is just obsessed with everyone's just physical appearance. And I've noticed too that there's just so much tabloid and local conversation wherever you go about how big someone gets or whatever. And it usually typically points towards the gain and not someone's losses. And then when it's the losses, then it's either way objectified as that human, without actually caring about, hey, if you're worried about this person, hey, wow, something's up with this person, they're behaving weird, rather than focusing on their appearance, maybe ask them how they're feeling, ask them if they're stressed, if they're sick. Considering someone's physical appearance and physical well-being has very close correlation with how much trauma they receive daily and in the past. Actually finding someone to care about and then judging them harshly or ostracizing them because of something as superficial as their appearance, whatever that may be. Those type of people really only deserve the most superficial people in their lives, and that's kind of all they really want. And everybody gets old and ugly, so it doesn't matter. And I'll probably be talking a lot about fetishisms from here on too, because it is fetishism. I mean, high key, it's disordered thinking. When you kind of have a trauma in the back of your head so deeply internalized that it becomes sort of like a forefront in how you want your sexuality to be, it actually isn't healthy for your brain development, and your brain does continue to develop as you get older. So not kink shaming, because I feel like kink is kind of like the softcore version of oh, this really gets me going, I understand this about myself, it might be weird. I think when you make fetishism your whole life, you are actually kind of disordered thinking. And I was also told I'm supposed to talk about my personal trauma. And since we're on that topic, today of mukbangs and CP, I have very strong feelings that I was forced to be a child feeder, and that is complicated. So I don't know how to go into that, but there you go. There's one trauma nugget for you. The entirety of my human trafficking family, all pretty much had like weight gain fetishes. I mean, they kind of had a lot, but like for some reason in my family that was like just like a main daily thing, and pretty much involved itself in my personal life and like the awful times that I had to do that stuff, and in all the pretty much people that was associated with the specific trafficking ring that we were a part of. So yeah, I think we can just agree that, you know, being obsessed with your kid's body in general is just weird. I think if like disassociation is something you can actually notice, and you notice you're struggling with it, something that I try to do, and I know it's very hard, is whatever you're doing, like taking note of smell or taste or feeling, or maybe you have like a fear response, if you kind of just like notice that feeling and try to associate it with anything around you. Like, I've been putting textures in my videos because I have horrible memory right now, but I will see a texture or I will hear a sound and I'll just kind of feel that and try to like remember where I remembered it from. And you could probably have one memory resurface that like thousands of other memories are buried underneath. But sometimes triggers can also be very pleasant, like it can be associated with the times you've got loved bombed, or something I'm calling longing dysphoria, which is the opposite of love bombing. It's like when you have a very neglectful parent and they do one nice thing for you and you only remember that one nice thing, and it basically, you obsess over the one time so much that it's like you starve yourself of like the neglect that is actually present. Love bombing and longing dysphoria, they're both pretty much disassociative tactics to get you forget how shitty they actually were to you. So the pleasant times you disassociate or you're triggered by something, like the smell of a food that you cooked triggers a memory that is actually pleasant, and then you just kind of go into a stupor and, you know, maybe do too many drugs, eat too many foods, do too much gambling, and that's kind of how that works. But it is a trauma response. I know this is old news, but I had to sketch out what I saw at Pitch Pine Bog. Speaking of mukbangs, they'd shove some really weird shit into us in there. It's just a site for music festivals, but also a actual baby killing franchise by locals. So if your parents bully you, tell them it's their fault and to unalive themselves. That's it. Deuces, my gooses.